Hello and welcome to this session of English 206. Today we're going to be talking about research questions. Now, I cannot stress enough the importance of coming up with a research question and its importance in formulating everything about your research. If I say that a research question is probably the most important part of your research, I am not exaggerating. And by that, I mean that if you come up with a good, solid, clear, arguable research question, you've done most of the work. It's like going to a doctor and the doctor looking at your symptoms and diagnosing what you have. The diagnosis is almost everything, right? Because after that, it's just the healing process. It takes time. Granted, it takes the right medicine, it takes the right approach, it takes the right dosage, it takes a lot of other work. But knowing what is wrong with you and being able to assess what is wrong is half of the whole healing process, right? So diagnosis is very important. And I usually like to liken a research question to the diagnosis. Now, let me tell you some fun fact. I'm going to share a few fun facts with you today. And one fun fact is that the research question is something across the board in all disciplines, whether you're in the humanities or the social sciences and its various disciplines, or whether you are in engineering, whether you're working on a technical report, whether you are doing a medical study or a chemical study or whatever it is, neurological study, whatever it is. Every single study has to have a research question. So a research question is sort of like this universal thing that we have in all research. Now, some research and most papers have a thesis statement, which is what you've learned to write in your essays, but some of them don't. The entire paper is the thesis in a sense, right? So, and the research question is not something that you just have for a paper or a research, like for example, in this class or other classes. A research question is something that flies not just across the board from discipline to discipline, but even in a way vertically. Like if you're writing something small or if you're writing something big. What is the smallest thing you can write? Maybe an essay. What is the biggest thing you can write? A book, right? And so the research question is the same. It's the same idea that every single project that I come up with, every single academic project that I come up with has to have a research question. So I cannot stress enough the importance of having a research question and having a good research question, because a good research question means everything else becomes easy. Formulating your thesis statement becomes easy. Coming up with arguments becomes easy. And you're going to see, I'm going to give you hell for the research question, not because I love to give you hell, not because I want to be mean, not because I'm just like flexing my mental muscles with you. No, I'm going to give you hell because if you do not read properly and listen to the videos and do everything to a T, like follow the instructions clearly, you're going to fall flat on your face. And if you fall flat on your face, I'm going to give you hell. So this is the only reason I will be giving you hell, is because I want you to do the work. It's just a question, but this question is very important. Learn how to nail it. Learn how to write it. Let me tell you something. Fun fact, another fun fact. As I'm writing my dissertation, a PhD dissertation that's like 300, 400 pages long, I have one research question for my entire dissertation, and it is very limited. It's very limited. I have my audience defined, I have my country defined, my participants defined, my parts, area of expert, everything is very, very clear. Like you would read the research question and you would think, okay, you know what, I can answer this in a paragraph. But guess what? I'm writing an entire dissertation on it because it takes time to find the answer. Now, granted, this research question, which is very direct, very clear, has two sub questions that go with it. But in essence, it's one question, one question, one question in one sentence. That is one line, like one line on a page for an entire dissertation. So if you come up with a research question that is like has so many different subparts, I'm going to tell you, no, it's too broad. It is too broad. And the funny thing is that when in my cohort, we took a course as I was doing my PhD that teaches us how to work to come up with a topic for our dissertation and to work on our dissertations. And it's funny because one of the things that our professor, who's a big name in the field, did with us was said, this week you have to write a research question. And it's funny because I was like, oh, I know how to do this. I teach my students how to do this. And I wrote my research question and I said, oh, I'm going to fall flat on my face because probably he's not going to like it. Probably it's different. It's going to be different from what I teach my English 204 students. It's going to be different from a dissertation research question. I was the only one in class who did not get corrected. And it's because it's the same. It's the same. What I teach you is what is applicable everywhere. So whether you're doing your master's, you're writing a paper, whether you're doing your PhD, writing your dissertation or a paper, whether you are submitting a research for a journal, it's all going to be the same across the board. I have a question I'm going to take. Hussein is asking, do we have to include the aspects that are going to be discussed in the research paper in the title? First of all, we're talking about the research question. We're not talking about titles here. So research question is one thing, title is another, aspects of the paper is something else. So we'll get to that eventually, but not in this section. Oh, of the research question, yes, we'll talk about this in a second. So this is the amazing thing about this course is that whatever you're learning is something that is going to be applied elsewhere and broadly. Right? So I'm not giving you, like, I will tell you sometimes, for example, this works here, this just works here, or there, or there. But in general, when it comes to the research question, we're going to be doing something that is a little bit more universal. Granted, in the sciences, when you come up with a research question, it can be a research question that solicits a yes or no answer. So you're asking, like, for example, is, or, you know, a question that begins with is, because this solicits a yes or no question answer. But in general, we do not ask questions that solicit a yes or no answer. Why? Because it has to be complex. I'm not running an experiment here. I'm not running bibliometric, you know, analysis here. I'm not just like looking at numbers. I am studying something that is argumentative. And so we're going to be learning how to write a large literature review of a particular subject. And when I say literature review, we'll talk more about that, because there are two literature reviews. When you hear the word literature review, you have to keep those the distinction in mind. Okay, I'm going to share my screen with you. So let's go over what we're doing this week, and you have to pay attention to something very important. This week, we are going to be submitting on Friday, just to give me some time to correct and edit before your next assignment, because I want you to have nailed your questions before. Now, at the same time, while we are working on this, we're also trying to find the people who are working on something similar to what we're working on and teaming up and collaborating. This means that if you see a research question on the Google Doc that you think that this is something that you can contribute to, talk to the person who has written it, especially if he or she is is in the same major as you. I want you to collaborate in this course. Otherwise, this course is going to be too heavy for you, too heavy. Don't judge by the first couple of weeks. It's going to definitely to be very heavy. So writing a research question, as I have mentioned before, is the most important step in any research, and formulating a strong research question saves you, the research, a lot of time and effort in the future. And for that reason, I've given you a lot of sources to help. Those sources, two of which, the videos I've recorded, and I've also included a handout for you that guides you through the process, etc. So the research, where was I? Okay, so the research question should be the first step of the research, and the step that keeps getting revisited throughout the research process, because you might adjust it. You might adjust your research question later on based on the research that you are finding. The research question to a research paper is like the heart and embryo. It's the first to be formed and the most vital organ of the embryo's growth. It's very, very important that you get that heartbeat, okay, which is your research question. So in this week, you have to go over the 2 videos and the handout on how to formulate a research question. Formulate the research question, post it on the Google Doc so I may review it for you. Let's take a look at the collaboration form. So I have over here some names, and I want you to see who do you think you can work with. So I have, for example, many people in biology who are pre-med. Not everybody filled out this so far, but for example, I have Karim, who's in biology, Muhammad, and there can be collaboration there. Somebody maybe from chemistry can also collaborate with them, etc., etc. Or maybe computer science people and applied mathematics people. So I want you to see who you can collaborate with. Find others who are interested in what you're interested in, contact them and agree on a collaborative area or subject. And then on page 3 onwards, you can fill out your groups as we work through this. So what you can do is you can list the names, list your majors, list your subject of interest and the topic to collaborate on. This is very important. Okay, let me just check yes, we have to work in groups of 3. We have to work in groups of 3. And the reason I say groups of 3, Jad, is because I'm going to stop sharing for a second. The reason I'm saying groups of 3 is that I have been teaching this course for, let's see now, 8 years. And the first few years I was teaching it, I was having students write their own papers. And then I decided, you know what, literature in composition and applied linguistics, literature in my field was showing that collaboration is very important. It's very important because it helps you develop certain skills that are beyond the language, right? And so I started inviting people to collaborate, but it was left up to them. And then I noticed this huge difference between the research produced by one person versus research produced by several people. In fact, I'm studying this in the sciences as well. I'm seeing the publication burdens of researchers, and I've noticed that through my research that people who collaborate, who have a community of practice, who have formed a group that works together on research, tend to do much, much, much better than people who work alone. And this is why, probably one of the reasons why people in the sciences and the social sciences produce and publish a lot more research than people in the humanities, because people in the humanities are loners, they work alone. This can be one reason. The other thing is that I've noticed that when people work in groups of 3, disputes are much fewer. So if you're working with somebody else, like one person, it's much more difficult to maintain rapport. But if you're working with 2 other people, it somehow flows better. 3 is a magical number. The other thing is that most graduate programs that you're applying to nowadays are asking us, people who are writing your recommendation letters, whether you can work in groups or not, whether you are a team player, whether you know how to do research with other people. Because research produced alone, apparently, as I just mentioned, is not as good as research produced in groups. Not even Einstein worked alone. He he had a community that supported him. He had friends, they met once a week, they discussed ideas. He actually attributed his genius to them, not just his first wife, but also the other people who worked with him. And so he says, I wouldn't have been able to do it without them. It's everybody else who has worked with me, who has helped me come up with these brilliant, amazing theorems. So this is why it's important that we work with other people. Plus, working with other people makes the work seem so much more manageable. I remember one time writing a paper with 2 other people over the weekend. A 35-page paper, which we submitted for publication, and it was brilliant. And we worked on it over the weekend, and we didn't even feel that we had worked on a paper. So yes, definitely not encouraged. It's this year I'm making it mandatory. You have no choice. So you're choosing to work with two other people. Okay, let me go back to my screen. So when we go to this Google Doc, I'm going to share with you, since this is a Google Doc, so it's open to everybody. I'm going to share with you, thank you so much, Karim, and thank you, Lean, for submitting your research questions. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to give you some feedback on your research questions to help you improve them and to help you to help others see where things can go wrong. I'm going to start with Lean. So Lean says, what are the different symbolic interpretations of fire in various literary works, and how do they appeal to the content of those texts? Okay, first of all, we're working with symbols and symbolism, right? Symbolic interpretation of fire. However, in various literary works means that you are writing an encyclopedia, Lean. You are writing an encyclopedia on the work. You're not writing a dissertation. You're not writing an MA thesis. Thesis. You're not writing a research paper. You are writing an encyclopedia about that. So you can pick one text, you can pick 2 texts and compare, and maximum 3 texts, but preferably reduce them to very, very specific texts or poems even, and you are going to find so much to talk about. How do they appeal to the content? I'm not sure I understand what you mean by the word appeal. So your words must be clearly defined. You have to define your terms. How do they appeal to the content? How do they enhance the content? How do they support the content? How do they, I don't know what, but appeal is a little bit, appeal to whom? So things are a little bit unclear over here. Okay, so that will help you, but you are on the right track. You're definitely on the right track. Karim, on the other hand, asked what environmental factors allowed introducing wolves into Yellowstone National Park in 1995 to change the way rivers flow in the park. What environmental factors allowed? Here also allowed, I'm not sure what you mean by allowed. I'm going to read the comments in the chat, but for now, let's take a look at the question. So what environment, so you're going to be listing the environmental factors, right? So when you start with what, you're going to be listing environmental factors. However, does that make it arguable? Maybe, maybe not. But in order to make it more arguable, you can start your question with how. I'm not saying this question, the question has to be altered and changed. But what do you mean by allowed? Like, what helped introducing wolves in Yellowstone National Park in 1995 to change the way rivers flow in the park? Okay, so what? Does your question stand up in the face of my question? So what? Why should I care? It's very important, of course, and I'm very much interested in Yellowstone National Park. But why are you picking this question? Like, my question is, why is it that we levitate or gravitate towards research questions that are about something beyond us? Like, you might have been born and raised in California. You might really, or not California, but in the States, or in Montana. You might have visited Yellowstone National Park so many times. You might have been intrigued by whatever is going on over there. But why should I care? And this is my first question. The second question, Karim, is why should I care as a Lebanese? And I'm not saying I'm, I'm saying this like half kiddingly in a sense, because I am on one hand very interested, but I'm playing the devil's advocate over here. Why is it that we love to do research about everything else but us? I think this is the reason why we are a barren land here in Lebanon when it comes to research. Anybody who does any research is a pioneer in the field here in Lebanon. Nobody else has done anything. Like I come to think of any research that I want to do, and I'm a pioneer. I'm the first to do it, which is a really sad fact. We have such intelligent and smart human beings in this country. We have so much potential, yet everybody is traveling abroad and everybody's doing research on everything else but Lebanon, or but the Middle East, but other countries in the Middle East, or but the country you're coming from. Why don't we concentrate our efforts, our minds, our brains on something that is here, that is observable, that we can see, that we can study, that if we want to collect data, like do field work data, we can. So I love this question, Karim, but I want you to work on something more immediate. I want you to work on something that is much more relevant to us here in this country. I want us to learn how to concentrate our efforts on us. It's a little bit inviting you to be a little bit more narrow-minded than I would want you to be, but at the same time, we really, really need you. We, especially in this country, especially now, especially these days, we really need all the effort that we can get from researchers here. Karim, I don't think it would be that arguable. So in a way, targeting a more general public. Don't worry about your audience. Your audience is us for now. It's not like, for example, my English 206 students are working on a project for IBDA. IBDA, we have something around 860 people or 680 people participating this year. So the audience is much larger, much broader. I don't want you to worry too much about the audience right now. And as much as I want you to worry about working on something that is more immediate, like if we're working on something in Lebanon, something related to the environment, related to whatever you're interested in, but it's here. Like let's talk about, for example, rivers in Lebanon. If you're working on that, you can at least go and observe. You can take pictures. You can ask people questions. You can talk to, park rangers here in this country. You can do so much more because it's accessible. It is here. Even if we don't have sources, even if we don't have a lot of data, even if we don't have research papers, you can still find a lot to work with. You know what I mean? This is on one hand. On another hand, you're also doing your country a service, or you're doing the country you're in a service. I always see researchers who work at AUB who are not from Lebanon. My friend, for example, Neve Kelly, she's Irish. She studied in the US. She came to Lebanon in 2016 to work here. And she does research on Lebanon, like a lot of research on Lebanon. And the reason is because she's here. She takes advantage of her location. She's a linguist. She can do her work anywhere she wants, or on anybody. So she works on the Lebanese, and she works on linguistic practices of the Lebanese. And it's amazing because she's contributing to the place she's in, even though she's not Lebanese, even though she doesn't even speak Arabic. So whatever Arabic or Lebanese Arabic she learned, she picked up here, and they're just like few words. Tell her, what's the difference between ha or ha and ha? She doesn't, she cannot hear it. She says, I can't hear the difference. And yet she's still working on this country. So what I want you to get excited about is working on something here, which means two things. Number one, nobody has worked on it, which is a good thing because you're the first. Number two, nobody has worked on it, which is a bad thing because you cannot find sources. But don't worry about that part. We will still find sources. We will still find sources that are on something similar somewhere else, and we can take these results and maybe say they might work here. They might be applied here in Lebanon. Okay. Let me just
Professor,
pause. Go ahead.
I wanted to ask whether we can do like virtual interviews with the specialists in the field and maybe add that to the paper.
Definitely yes. You can always do interviews and interview experts, or what you can do is you can email experts, especially at AUB. You can send them an email saying, can I ask you a few questions about this and that, and you can just answer me very briefly. They can do that, or you can interview them. You can do short surveys if you want. These are all okay. It's fine. Because we're not publishing our research, we're not exposing people to any dangers or sensitivities, so we're fine. Thanks for asking this question, by the way. Okay, go ahead.
If my topic in mind is, I'm a biology major, but the topic in mind is between biology and psychology. Is it okay?
Definitely okay. And not only that, you're encouraged to do this kind of work, because if you're to stick to biology, like pure biology, this means that you have to do research in a lab maybe, which is not accessible nowadays. So it's better if you pick something that is borderline biology and psychology. In fact, most research nowadays is doing that. It's interdisciplinary, so it's biology and nursing, it's biology and psychology and nursing and so many different things, or even the economy sometimes comes in. So we, it's actually advisable to do that. Most research I've been coming across nowadays, especially in nursing, I'm just using nursing as an example, has been nursing and business communication, because they need to have these difficult conversations with their patients and etc. etc. So it's really a lot of fun. Lynn or Lean, you have a question. You're saying even if it's concerning literary works, can you clarify your question? Because I don't know which part are you of what I was saying are you referring to. In the meantime, I'll just take Ayman's question. The scholarly articles in the database are so limited, especially the ones about Lebanon. Don't worry about that. We'll get to that in a session on its own, where we will see how sometimes data from other countries might be applicable, especially when we're doing a literature review. We do not need to come up with like solid like answers. So you're basically saying, this is what other research says. It might be applicable to Lebanon and it might not be applicable to Lebanon. You're in a sense, in the conclusion, you're inviting people for further research. Doing research and writing a research paper is not something that is easy, and I'm not expecting you to pick it up very, very quickly in this course. But what I'm trying to do is put you on the right track. Like you're like a little choo-choo train, and we're just directing you properly over here. So Lynn, okay, or Lynn, or Lina. I'm kidding. Yes, I wanted to ask if we can ask professionals some questions that would help in our paper. Yeah, what you can do is if like let's say you're writing a humanities paper or something about literature, you can always interview your professors because they're experts in the field, so they can always help you and you can refer to them on a particular issue for sure. Other questions? Nadine is saying, I wanted to ask, since I'm focusing on general quantum physics and quantum computing, I have so much math that I haven't even taken yet. So in these papers, can I take the ideas and cite them and pretend the math isn't there? Nadine, I advise you to change topics because I won't be able to help you with this. I did minor in astronomy. I do have an understanding, but it's been such a long time. So I'm not going to be able to so what you have to do is when you're collaborating, you have to find the middle ground between your interests and other people's interests, and maybe do something in between, because it might be a little bit challenging for both you and me to verify this information that you're saying and to write it into a paper that's like a successful paper, something that you can use later on as a sample of your writing, something that you, if you're applying for graduate school somewhere, or if you're applying for a job somewhere, you can use this as a sample of your writing. I have a lot of students in this course who are pre-med students who later on use this paper as a sample of their writing when they apply to a medical school. And I want this paper to be as good as possible. If I cannot help you with the information in it, because I'm not an expert in the field, it's going to be a problem for both you and me. So
Yeah, okay, for sure.
this is my take. It's been such a long time since the last time I took quantum physics, and it's going to be problematic. I cannot. I'm no longer an expert in the field. Not that I ever was. I mean, as an undergraduate, that was my minor, but it's been such a long time, so I can't help. I know how complicated physics can get, for sure, and especially because I'm like super. I still read. I'm currently reading the biography of Albert Einstein. This is why I'm always referring to him. It's written by Walter Isaacson, but yeah, it's been such a long time, especially with quantum physics. Every single week you have new stuff coming out, not up, new stuff coming out. So if you choose our partner before submitting the research question, should you submit the same question? Yeah, just one question, Fatima. One question per group with the 3 names. So if you know, you like, for example, Jad, for example, Jad was asking, so can we collaborate? So if Jad knows, for example, 2 other people, hi Jad, if you know 2 other people and you know you want to work with them, you can start working right away on your research question and then submit that one question, preferably. Okay. Okay. Other questions before I stop ahead?
Do we have to choose the partners and the final question before Friday, or just our personal research question?
It's a work in progress. Try to, like, as you're thinking about that, like if you take some time to submit your question, it's fine. Like if you message the group and say, oh, you know what, we're still working on the group, can we have, like, for example, until Saturday to submit our question, I would say, yeah, go ahead and do that. um, because you know, you're like doing two birds with one stone. You're finding the group and you're writing the research question. So you have two paths. Let me clarify. You have two paths. You can either do the one research question and then see who is there who also is working on something you're interested in, and then join them or join forces. Or you can decide, you know what, there are two people I really like in this course. They're my friends from a previous course. We like to work together, or we're in the same discipline or major, and we want to team up before we work on our question. I want to start working on our question together. Go ahead, by all means, do that. So it's up to you. Yes, definitely, May. You're encouraged to also collaborate with people from different majors, provided that you have the same interests and you're interested on working on one subject together. Yeah, you can do that. So this is another question. What else? Any other questions? Okay, so let's wrap things up. So your job this week is to write a research question. The idea of writing a research question might seem like such a simple thing to do because it's just one question and it's just one sentence and everything. But remember, this is something that works across disciplines, and it also works vertically from the smallest project to the biggest project. It's the same. And it is a little bit more complicated than you think it is. A research question has to be so carefully written, so carefully phrased, that every single word accounts for something. So if I ask a question like in the handout, why did the chicken cross the street? Which street? What time? Which chicken? From which side to what side? You know, we cannot ask such questions. It's just too broad, too, I don't know what. So you have to limit it. I like the fact that the question begins with a why, because it invites speculation. It invites an assessment of reasons or drives, or can I study the psychological factors that drove the chicken to cross Bliss Street, for example, from the side of the restaurants to the university? Because, you know, both sides are dangerous for the chicken. On one end, you know, Bliss House might butcher the chicken and use it for chicken fajita. On the other hand, you have AB cats that are also posing a danger on the life of the chicken, or maybe not. The chicken, I've seen a chicken fight a cat, so I mean, they can find their way. So you know, so we have to like be able to assess. I'm glad you like that, Nadia. So we have to be able to assess, you know, what are the different factors, and can we really study the psyche of a chicken? Like, have you ever seen anybody run, for example, a survey on chicken, to see, like, for example, or like interview chickens, to see, you know, what emotional distress, you know, chicken goes through, etc., etc. I don't know if you've ever seen those like chicken shaming posts on the internet. They're hilarious. You know, people just like stick a paper to their chicken, shaming it. You have to look it up. It's so funny. So Nadine is saying, Doctor, I wrote my first annotation on quantum physics. Do I have to change it? That was an exercise in annotation. And I remember you asking me, should it be related to my topic? And I said, that doesn't have to, but it'll be better if it is, so that it, you know, you save some time, but it doesn't, you don't have to change anything. Okay, that was an exercise that is separate from this one here. Don't worry about it. Mark is saying, so we should focus our work on Lebanon MENA phenomena. Yes and no. Yes, I prefer if, for example, you're studying something like related to the economy, that you focus on Lebanon. Like, why not? But if there is a topic in mind that doesn't have to be about Lebanon, you're also invited, but you have to like, I want to make it, I want you to make it related to you and relevant to you and your audience for several reasons. Number one, as I said, because we're lacking in the disciplines, every single discipline, we're lacking in the field. We need research that's done on us. And because if you need data, it's more accessible and easier to collect, especially field work. Like you're not going to go to Yellowstone and take pictures. It's such a hassle. But you will be able to probably go to Marj Bisri and take pictures if need be it, right? Hussein is saying, can the consequences of the explosion of Beirut be an interesting topic? Definitely, especially because this is very much related to Ibda. And if you do something of that sort, I will also invite you to join the Ibda poster forum. That should be fun for you because people are presenting the research. I have another class that's working on that, but you can also do that. It's not obligatory for you, but you can do that. Awesome. If you don't have any more questions, I'm going to stop the recording so that we can keep it short. And